welcome to my channel, Rachel's Atelier. It's kind of late at night, but I decided I would get started on this because it was on my list of things to do today. It's a little bit late for me, the day's kind of getting away, but I figured I could at least get started on the project. So I am taking some classes from another artist named Dennis Perrin. Perrin, just in case you are interested in looking him up. Highly recommended. And one of our assignments is to do a study of a master artist. So we're supposed to pick a work by a master artist and try to not necessarily exactly mimic it, but to kind of dissect what that artist did. Right now we're focusing mainly on value and color. So I'm going to do a value block in here and just kind of get it laid out tonight, hopefully. And hopefully you can do this. Not real great with the camera yet, but this is by John Singer Sargent. This painting, let's see what it's called. It's called Summer Morning, A Summer Morning by John Singer Sargent. It's basically a female figure walking next to a pond, and I think it's pretty. My dogs are tired. They're going to be whining because they want me to go to bed. So I'm going to try to work fast because I want to go to bed too. And I am in my bedroom. I have one dog being good, laying on the bed, and my needier dog is on the floor whining. So he might make some vocal appearances, and hopefully my book will stay right here. And you probably won't be able to see the book while I'm working. I'm sure I'll be in the way most of the time. But hopefully I was able to show it on screen a little bit. So I'm using a very limited color palette. I just have some leftover paint from other things that I've been working on. So I still have some of my yellows on here, and I might try to use them just for the sake of using them so they don't dry up on my palette. But primarily I'll be using my permanent rose in my French ultramarine blue, and I've got a little bit of phthalo blue and titanium white just to block in the values, not really even looking at color right now, just composition and value. So we'll get started on that. And so far all I've done, I primed this panel, I think it was yesterday that I primed it, and then I just, right before I went live, I toned it, and I just used my permanent rose and some paint thinner, and then I wiped it down just so I have kind of a mid-tone to work from. And I'm going to work dark light, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to mix some of that ultramarine permanent rose and the phthalo blue so I can get a really dark color to work with. I'm going to try, I have a tendency to paint really thick, so that's what I've been doing. And I'm still going to continue painting really thick and having lots of brush strokes in my work. But I need to start being more mindful of the very first few layers of a painting, because if you paint really thick and you get a texture in the first few layers, then anything that you put on top of that is going to have kind of an awkward texture that isn't reflective of the paint that's on top. So the thicker paint really needs to stay on the very top layers of the painting. And I'm not working on this in any particular order, kind of just looking where the, well, I guess I am, because I'm looking for where the darker values are, so I can just block those in. And I'm using a palette knife right now just so I don't waste any paint, but I'm gonna then go back over it just with a paintbrush so that it's not too thick. For the last year I really tried to use a palette knife almost exclusively in a lot of my paintings because I really like the texture that it leaves. But I do think I need to be more versatile. And honestly, part of the reason too is just that I hate cleaning brushes, and palette knives are so much easier to maintain. And actually the brush I'm going to be using for this, I kind of ruined at one point. So it's not going to make the prettiest brush strokes, but it's one of my larger brushes, and I can't afford to buy another one. I have gotten a lot better about just taking really good care of my brushes and trying to be mindful of that. Alright, so, and right now, I feel like I kind of have to work around where the figure is, but I do just kind of want to put an outline so I can start to get a sense of where she is. I'm going to use just a little bit of paint thinner on this just so I can kind of sketch her in. And not have that paint be too thick and inflexible. So I'm kind of looking at the negative space around right now to get a sense of where she is in the composition. And honestly, I actually didn't measure to see if my panel is the exact same proportion as the painting, and I haven't trained my eye quite good enough to just be able to wing it, so something might end up being off. I hope not. We'll see. But I'm painting on this panel that I just got, cut at the lumber yard because it's cheap to work that way. Especially when you are learning. And I definitely, even though I've been painting for, a couple of years pretty solidly, I'd say it's fairly new that I've decided to kind of, really train myself in a certain way. And so I kind of feel like I'm starting from scratch. But I've just recently decided that I really want to take painting seriously. So this isn't going to have any kind of resemblance. You'll barely be able to tell this is a person, I think. But I just want to get her blocked in so I know where she is as I paint in other values. Because I will end up putting some values in her, but she's wearing a white dress, and so even the shadows are pretty toned down and mellow. And I'm going to be doing the dark first, so I don't just want to end up painting over the space she is, kind of unaware that that's where she's going to belong. And I'm sure I'll have to make a lot of revisions. And also, part of this painting method that I'm learning is not just about, it's not just like a how-to tutorial about how to paint like a certain way necessarily, but how to approach painting and art from kind of a mindset perspective, which is really appealing to me because I've actually found, I used to think that kind of stuff was kind of hokey and lame and just wasn't really into it because I've always been kind of pragmatic about a lot of things, and but I have found over the last 2 years that has just changing the way I approach different problems and opportunities. It really has kind of a bigger ripple effect on my life, and so that was kind of a happy accident because I actually chose to take classes with Dennis Perrin just because I follow him on Instagram and I absolutely love his work. It's not exactly what I want to do, but of everyone that I follow, I felt like he was kind of the closest in style to what I would like to kind of incorporate into my own ideas. Because you have the techniques of painting and then you have the concepts behind it. And I would say, conceptually, my art will probably be pretty different from Dennis Perrin's, but I really like his style. And he offers classes. so that was lucky. And it wasn't until really after I had already to his classes that I kind of discovered that a lot of his philosophy of painting and art is really in line with my own. And so I don't know if, that's just kind of like serendipity but it's pretty exciting for me. I'm really excited about it. I had trouble in the last week with painting because when I first started, it really kind of clicked with me, and I banged out a bunch of paintings that I really liked. And I thought, man, this is gonna, now this is the path that I'm on. But I have hit some bumps in the road with it, and I have also put out some extremely ugly paintings, like uglier than I have ever managed to do before. But I am keeping an open mind, and I'm just kind of letting the process happen. And I do, I don't remember where I originally heard this, but I think it makes sense, and I kind of abide by this way of thinking as well, is that we all have, whether you're, learning to paint or you're learning some kind of instrument, you kind of have failures that you just need to make. That's just part of the process. And so, you need to work through them, and you need to make those failures so that you can move past them, because they're going to be there. You can't just opt out of that learning process. All right, so these are my darkest values. Her dress actually is going to go off the canvas, so I'm going to just ignore what I've done so far down there and just paint over that with some lighter values a little bit later. And now I can start gradually lightening this up. And as I lighten it up, I might start to incorporate some warmer tones, those yellows, not because those are going to be the accurate colors for the composition, but just because I have those colors on my palette and I don't want to waste them. Yesterday, I think I worked exclusively in ink. And I have all these projects, all these ideas that I want to pursue, but it's hard for me to just put one project down and then go work on the other things that are on my list of things I want to accomplish that day. So yesterday I mostly focused on that, even though I wanted to get started on this, and so I couldn't let today go without getting started. Some little hairs, little bristles from my brush, I think, that are coming off maybe. I really abused this brush, sadly. Alright, so I'm gonna start, this is just like a cadmium yellow. And I can already tell that it's stiffening up, so I really need to use it. I have found that with the paints that I use, the titanium white dries the slowest, so I don't have to worry too much. I think I put too much titanium white on here, but I don't have to worry too much about that. But the yellows and the phthalo blue seem like they dry up a lot faster. Dogs are finally starting to wind it down. I used to always put too much white in my mixes, and I would just blow through so much white that I actually had tons of tubes of white just because I was so used to going through them way too fast. And I knew, that wasn't normal, that I shouldn't be using up that much white, but I don't know, just the way that I was seeing things, there was just like white mixed in with everything, and I didn't really use these kind of rich midtones. I didn't even really use enough dark tones, even though painting from dark to light is kind of just, it's the first rule of oil painting. That was evading the way that I was actually working. So that alone, that simple thing has made a big difference for me. I have to use my palette knife to really get that yellow out of there because it's so stiff. A little bit, I think, darker than I really want it to be, I think. Some lighter grass over here. I also have to stop thinking about the thing that I'm painting and just focus on form, value, and color. So it's not grass. It's not a lady, or an umbrella, or a pond. In a lot of ways, I made painting a lot harder on myself, and I would get so worried, especially if I was working on a commission. So I'm still fairly new to that. And I had one commission fall through a few months ago where I was working on it, and it just was not what the client wanted. And so it failed, I didn't, they basically told me I was not, even after several revisions, on the right track. And I was kind of devastated by that, to be honest. Really sucked. And I think then that kind of put me in the mode of being really rigid and perfectionistic when I approached commissions after that. And I kind of ran into a problem where when I list my commissions, I usually will do my own painting in a style that I want to offer. And it's, it was kind of a very loose, impressionistic style of painting, mostly landscapes. And people would hire me to do commissions for them, but then I would get so worried about it and how it would turn out and whether the person was going to like it or not, that I would end up basically doing not really photorealism, but I would just approach it too rigidly. So it lacked that kind of loose impressionist feeling that the example work that I had just done for myself had. And so that was something too that I got, feedback on, not necessarily like no one else fired me or, anything like that. But that was something that, if the biggest criticism that I got was regarding that. So I had a hard time, not necessarily with just your straight up landscape projects. The problem really came into play anytime that there would be some kind of man-made structure in the scenery, because I would almost paint it like completely separate, like it was a totally different thing than the surroundings, because it was geometric. It had, if it was a building, it had walls. It was smooth. And that just, I don't know, it really tripped me up and I couldn't get past it. And so it really helped me a lot, these lessons, to kind of approach a painting as though I'm not painting those things. I'm just painting forms, values, and colors. And then I went on to do one of the best paintings I've ever done. It was actually a painting of my parents' farm. And so there was this big sunset, or sunrise actually, because this was from a photo that I took a couple months ago in the morning. And the sun was rising and it was beautiful. And we had our grain silos were in there, and this old barn was in the scene just a little bit. And that kind of thing would really trip me up not long ago. Like I could paint the sunset, and actually this class has helped me, I think, even with that aspect of things. Like even the parts that I didn't think I was struggling with, I've already made really good progress on improving those. So, but then this last week, everything I did, I didn't even want to post it on Instagram. I have a few of them behind me. I don't know if they're in frame, but if they are, I'm sure you can't even tell what's going on. They probably just look like brown squares. They just are bad. So we'll see. I have to work past that. So I'm kind of squinting. I think my values are too dark still, so there's a lot of things I need to lighten up. I want to make sure. I know my paint is probably a little too thick already. But I might actually scrape some of it down so that the values and the placement is all still there. But I really need to be mindful of how thick that paint is. I'm gonna warm this up though first before I do that. So I can just indicate. So most of this composition is green and blue. And then there's some sunspots on her dress that are just a little bit, just kind of give that a warm impression. They're not really yellow, but they're almost yellow. So this is one of the few like really warm areas in the background. So I do want to warm up this tone before I lighten it up more. And then it's another light tone, but it's lighter in value. My goal is to finish this study this week. We'll see how that goes. I actually paint pretty fast for the most part. Not as fast as Bob Ross. But not really doing what Bob Ross did. And just a little bit down here. Just so it's there. Okay, so now I need to really lighten it up. Actually, her hair is pretty dark. And I kind of glossed over that. Probably don't need to spend a lot of time on that because it's sort of a detail, but it is a value. It is there. I also used to paint sitting down. I don't really know why. Painting standing up it's just better. Okay, so there wasn't much of that.